Hopefully, yesterday was a confidence-building win for Syracuse.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on this edition of One More Thing, we are going to talk about how hopefully yesterday's 77-69 win over Notre Dame is a confidence-building win for the Orange going forward. Plus, later on in the show, we are going to talk about the upcoming game for Syracuse next Wednesday against Clemson on the road. Not going to be easy, but hopefully this win gives them a boost heading into the next one. So let's talk about yesterday, all right, and how hopefully this is going to be a confidence builder. Adrian Autry, at the beginning of his post-game press conference, said something that I think the majority of us can agree with, including myself. And that is that this team yesterday showed a lot of heart. They did. They fell behind 25-8 in the first half. They're on their home floor, and it wasn't looking good. And myself and probably you all, most of you all, I should say, were assuming the worst, that this was going to be another one of those here we go again moments this season against a Notre Dame team. Then let's be honest about Notre Dame. I mean, they were under 500 too. They had the same record as Syracuse, same conference record. You're on your home floor. You're down by 17, really? But this team showed a lot of heart to battle back from 17 points down. And I sincerely hope that this is the game that it may or may not turn the entire season around. And let's be honest, it probably won't turn the whole season around. Like Syracuse is going to go on some magical run for the rest of the year. But I hope at minimum, it gives Syracuse players, coaches, the confidence that when they fall behind in games, when they fall behind by a lot of points, and it's going to happen, it happens to every team out there, that they believe that they can come back. Because I think prior to yesterday, I really don't think this team believed much in themselves when they would fall behind in games. And not necessarily like by 9 points or 8 points, something like that, like what happened against Boston College. I'm talking about when they really would get punched in the mouth, when they would fall behind by 15 plus. We saw how when they played against Louisville, they just rolled over after they fell behind in the first half. They rolled over. They couldn't come back. I'm not going to say they quit, but it was just they lacked energy. They lacked hustle. They didn't have it. I hope that going forward, though, when they get punched in the mouth, they believe that they can punch right back. On the last One More Thing mini podcast I did, which was actually the first edition of the One More Thing mini podcast, I had on Neil Adler from Inside the Loud House. It was after the Louisville game, and we weren't feeling really good. I don't think you were feeling really good about that game either, right? And we talked about the blowouts, that this team under Adrian Autry, when they lose, they typically get blown out, and the numbers back it up. 2/3 of the time under Adrian Autry, when this team loses, they lose by 10 or more points. But Adrian Autry, in his post-game press conference, said another thing that I think we can all agree with. When a player wakes up in the morning, when a team wakes up in the morning, they can't necessarily control if a shot is going to go in or not. Sometimes it's not going to go in. But you know what they can? They can control this. They can control their compete level. They can control their hustle. They can control their effort. And they can control their defensive intensity. And ultimately, how was Syracuse able to come back in this game? We talked about on yesterday's full podcast, post-game reaction, how Adrian Autry made one really key adjustment on Marcus Burton. He basically implemented the Jordan rules on him. If you are a younger member of this channel, younger member of this audience, I highly suggest looking up the Jordan rules with the Bad Boy Pistons. Go look it up on Google when you are done with this. My older folks, you all know what I'm talking about here. But he basically, that was the X's and O's part about yesterday against Marcus Burton. What doesn't show up on the X's and O's is that what sparked the comeback was Kyle Cuff getting a one-hand offensive rebound, falling on the floor, and then a couple seconds later getting up and finding himself open for a wide open three. That's the hustle that we are talking about. And the defensive intensity that they showed in the beginning of the second half, really throughout the entire second half, but especially that beginning, you hope that that can continue going forward. And look, ultimately, sports are about wins and losses. That's the ultimate goal, right? It's to win more games than you lose. You never want to lose in sports. But I will say this. This is what I will acknowledge here. Am I expecting that Syracuse basketball is going to win every single game? No, I don't. That's okay. As long as this team going forward shows that they can compete. I want them to compete. I think that is a fair expectation from myself and for all of you. Compete. You fall behind by 15 points, it's going to happen. Punch back. And that's what they did yesterday, and they ultimately won the game. I really hope that going forward, when Syracuse basketball falls behind, they now have a new sense of confidence, a new sense of belief. I don't care who the opponent is, that they can come back in games. Because I think that's something they lacked in previous games. I think that's something they lacked against Florida State, something they lacked against Maryland, and all the other previous blowouts that they've had under Adrian Autry. Belief and confidence. So that's my one more thing takeaway here. Hopefully this is a confidence-building win for Syracuse, coming back from 17 points down to beat Notre Dame 77-69. Leave your final thoughts in the comment section below because we're going to put a bow on Syracuse and Notre Dame talk. Coming up, the next opponent for Syracuse is Clemson. How do the Orange stack up against one of the ACC's best? Stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. This message is brought to you by Prizepicks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prizepicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, Prizepicks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prizepicks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least two players, and if your picks hit, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yes, that's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. It's fun to predict and easy to play. Plus, with Prizepicks Flex Play, you can still double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And with the app, you get your winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prizepicks. Prizepicks, run your game. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is so easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Ladies and gentlemen, you can make the argument that the next game for Syracuse basketball is the second toughest remaining game on Syracuse's schedule. In the regular season, at least. They are traveling to Clemson on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Clemson is 15-4, 7-1 in the ACC. This is one of the premier teams in the conference, and they are all but a lock to make the NCAA tournament. A year after, if you recall last season, this team was in the Elite Eight. They lost a couple of pieces, but guess what? They are still really, really good. Here's what you need to know about Clemson, all right? They can shoot. They are one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country. Here are the numbers about Clemson, all right? As a team, they shoot nearly 39% from three-point. That is best in the ACC and top 15 overall in the country. And if you look top to bottom on their roster, there isn't one or two players really that stick out as someone who really can't shoot. It's pretty much everyone on the roster has the capability of making a three-pointer. So Syracuse basketball going into this game can't have a game plan of like, all right, we're gonna let that player shoot a three, but we can't let this player shoot a three. No, it's basically the entire team. So here's what the game plan has to be, at least on defense, okay? And it's easier said than done. Clemson's obviously really good, and they shoot well for a reason. They got really good players, and they're one of the best teams in the conference. When Clemson sets a pick on offense, the defenders of Syracuse, they have to fight over the screen. See, a defender in basketball has two choices when they get picked. They can go under it, which gives the player an opportunity to shoot that has the basketball. Or option two, they can go over the screen, but what happens is the player with the ball gets a free lane to the basket. Syracuse basketball, they got to take option two. The numbers back it up. You cannot let this team shoot the basketball. Fight over the screens. Force them to beat you by going to the basket. Clemson's 2-point field goal percentage this season. Are you ready for this? 2-point field goal percentage ranks. They are 10th in the ACC, 173 overall in the country. This team beats you by being really efficient from the three-point line, not necessarily by shooting twos. So if you're Syracuse, if you can run them off the three-point line, that's your hope of an upset. The other hope is that they just are cold, which you don't really want to bank your whole game plan on. So you got to fight over those screens, force them to go to the rim, and hope that your rim defense is adequate enough. All right. So that should be the game plan against a team like Clemson. I hope that Syracuse can pull off an upset. I really don't think they will. Also, because if you think of the recent history of Syracuse at Clemson, it's not really good. It doesn't favor the Orange at all. They are 1-6 all time at Clemson. They've lost 5 straight in that building, even when Clemson over the years has not necessarily had the greatest teams. They've been good recently, not overall, really. And Syracuse basketball, in that stretch, they've made the NCAA tournament a few times, and they still really can't beat Clemson. The last win that Syracuse basketball had at Clemson was in 2017, but they've lost 5 straight since, and the only game that was even remotely close occurred in 2020. Now, there are some bad memories from that game in terms of how it ended, so I really won't spark those memories up. I won't really mention it, but that's about it. They typically, when they go to Clemson, if you remember at the end of last season, at the end of the regular season, it usually doesn't end well. They usually get blown out. And to circle back on what we talked about together in the first segment of this mini podcast, I hope that if Syracuse basketball falls behind by 10 or more points at some point in this one, they have a new sense of belief that they can come back and at least make it a game, if not win, right? So overall, leave your thoughts on the upcoming game against Clemson. Leave your final thoughts on Notre Dame in the comments section below. As far as what is coming up on the podcast in the future, don't think I'm going to post a podcast today. We will save it for tomorrow. Bills fans, best of luck to you all. I know many of you guys who consume this podcast are Buffalo Bills fans. They are playing the Baltimore Ravens at home in the divisional round of the playoffs. 6:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff. I'll be watching. Many of you all who are watching and listening to this podcast right now will be watching that game. So best of luck to the Buffalo Bills. They are my Super Bowl pick. And hey, you can leave also in the comment section below your Super Bowl pick. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, you can check out Locked On ACC Podcast. Alex Donald, Kenton Gibbs, they keep it real and bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. You can find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. And folks, if you really liked it, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tell just 1 or 2 of your closest Syracuse friends about the podcast Locked On Syracuse so that this channel can grow and reach all Syracuse Orange fans. Best of luck to the Buffalo Bills, and I will see you all again tomorrow.